It's Sunday morning, and every decent man and woman is listening to Test Miles with Nick Miles on FM News 101 KXL. Buckle in.
Sunday morning and time to talk cars for the next 60 minutes on your weekly automotive radio experience. I'm Nick Miles. You're listening to America's Automotive Radio Show, Test Miles. Locally created, nationally celebrated. This morning's team includes Misfits, Rapscallions, and Ne'er-Do-Wells. Genya the intern, Sean Walker, our producer, Old Man Brad, and of course, Oli the Viking Volvo seller. So what have we been driving this week? We've had some test models. We've been putting them through their paces to check out whether or not you should put them on your test drive list. First of all, I've been in the VW Passat. This is a four-door sedan, above average passenger and cargo space. Actually, a huge cargo space. Really surprised at how big the trunk was in the new Passat. Refined and quiet for this generation. Fuel efficient. It has a diesel engine. It has a 1.8 turbo, a V6 option, and of course, high on the safety scores. The bad parts about it are the performance is a little sluggish in some of the models. The GSG transmission is somewhat lackadaisical, and the latest safety features are a little bit behind the times, although the vehicle does rate well. So the engines are that turbocharged 1.8, a four-cylinder 2.0 liter, and also the diesel and the V6 as well, a 3.6 liter. Turbocharged horsepower gives you 170. In the 2-liter, it's 150 without the turbocharger, and the 3.6, 280. I actually kind of like the 3.6 a little better because of the more horsepower. The DSG, of course, is their transmission. It also comes with a 5-speed manual. Unfortunately, just front-wheel drive. You'll get a total of about 35 miles a gallon out of the diesel, and it steps down if you try the other versions. Now, what does it compete with, you ask? The Ford Fusion, the Honda Accord, the Nissan Altima, Chevy Malibu, Mazda 6, Toyota Camry are its main competitions. It is actually an interesting trim level vehicle because they have a couple of special trim levels, including the Wolfsburg version of the vehicle, which I kind of like the idea. And the price is pretty good, $21,320. Definitely the diesel version would be on my test drive list. Living in the Northwest, got to do a little diesel. Also been test driving the Acura TLX. This is a premium four-door family sedan. It's fairly quiet on the inside. Of course, Elliot Shiner did the sound system in this. He was the guy that's produced Steely Dan and the Foo Fighters. His sound system, unbelievable on the inside of this car. Good, quiet handling, fairly sporty. The underwhelming acceleration is a little something to be concerned about, and the braking is a little sluggish. Couple of different engines you can get in the Acura TLX. First of all, the 2.4-liter four-cylinder, 3.5 V6, and a 2.4 cylinder will get you 206 horsepower, go up to the V6, 290. Nice 9-speed automatic transmission, or an 8-speed automatic is available as well. It does come in all-wheel drive. About 28 miles a gallon is the average, 35 on the highway. We'll tell you that I'm only getting about 22 out of this, and that's a little concerning. The other thing that's very concerning is this horrible transmission they have put in there. It is the push-button transmission. So you get a different shaped button on the center for every single thing you want to do. Drive, park, reverse. First of all, reverse is a pullback. Drive is a push button, park is a push up the other way. They're different buttons. And it looks like somebody went to a antique store and bought a different piece of china for each set of your dining room plate set. It looks terrible. And every time I need to reverse. Normally, you know where what you do in a car, you reverse. You're driving somewhere, you want to reverse out, just you know where the car's going to go. You pull it down, you pull it up a couple of swings. If it's a manual, you go up to the right or down to the left. No. I have to look down and go, which one is reverse? I'm not sure. What am I doing?
That's shocking because Acura is so nice at designing their cars.
I think this new transmission, it's also in the RLX. I think this new transmission, horrible. I think they made a huge mistake with this. Love the car, the transmission, I could flush it. right tomorrow. It's really driving me crazy. Been in the car for a week, still can't work out where everything is.
Now, do you mean how the car drives, the transmission driving, or just
the push button
the controls?
The transmission's not,
change
it's
the controls pretty easy.
Yeah, they won't though. This is the new. I think what they were trying to do is be clever and advance their controls into the next level, the next generation. We're going to be the first people to put 80 million different buttons in the middle, and then you have to work out which one to push. Yes, unique would be one of a kind. So it's not truly unique because it's in two different cars, but it's driving me crazy.
That worked really well with the BMW and the iDrive back in 2002 also.
Yeah,
they were going to be ahead of the curve.
Well, although I would say BMW saved themselves. Let's hope Acura can save themselves, starting at $31,445, Sean.
I've been driving the 2016 Kia Sorento, third row SUV. This is their biggest SUV that Kia has to offer, and it's one of their best sellers. It has 3 different engine choices. It has a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that has 240 horsepower, a 2.4-liter inline 4-cylinder that has 185 horsepower, and a 3.3 V6 290 horsepower engine. It has a lot of tech with their UVO. They have blind spot monitors. They also have their lane departure in there. It's a great little car. Drives like a little SUV, but you have the full size. Decent fuel range.
It has a third row, right?
Yes, it does have a third row. Third row is actually not that bad. I did get in the back. I mean, I wouldn't want to drive from Portland to California in there unless you're a little child, but just going around in town, I was comfortable with sitting in the third row.
We call that the car that you use to go from the pub home.
So you think that Zen you can right back down, right?
Yeah.
Well, we could shove him in a trunk.
I don't know.
Say him in the third seat.
He's going to be taller than all of you by next
Yeah,
year.
you're probably right.
Starting price for the Sorento is $24,900, and I give it a 9 out of 10.
Excellent, Brad.
I had a chance when I was scheduled into this. I wasn't overly excited. I'm a big Kia Soul fan. So when the Nissan Juke came on the schedule, I was like, the styling doesn't hit me great. It's kind of an urban sport cross, small SUV, distinctive looking vehicle. And I was really pleasantly surprised, and the styling grew on me. It's a fairly aggressive style, kind of bold. And
the headlights are in a weird place, aren't they? Like up on the hood somewhere.
Kind of rounded front end, but inside was really quite fun and roomy for the driver compartment. Wasn't terrifically roomy in the back, but they have a color studio that allows you to change the distinctive accessories in the interior. You can do red and purple and all sorts of things. Really,
I think
make it your own.
That'll be exciting when it changes with your mood. So if you look in the car and it's all red on you, so why aren't we talking to Brad today?
I think that can backfire pretty quick. You're riding with your significant other, and all of a sudden your side of the car goes red.
It's like your mood ring.
Right.
Yeah, but this was launched originally in 2011, and they've made some changes, just interior, but they're the Icon system, which is an integrated control mode. It gives you different ways in which you can drive it. It gets great mileage, and 30 on the front wheel drive and 28 all around in the all-wheel drive. Price ranges starts out at $20,250, and you can get it all the way up to $30,000. So that's pretty expensive for that car. The biggest drawback that I had is its competition, because you've got the Kia Soul, which is an all-wheel drive coming available, and then the Jeep Renegade. And then in 2016, you have even more competitors in the all-wheel drive
it was
options.
built initially, that Juke was built to go up against the Mini. The one thing I love about the Juke is the fact the center console in there is modeled after a gas tank on a motorcycle. So that color on the inside is kind of cool.
It was cool. And I really did like the 360 camera. For a vehicle of that size and that ilk, the interior controls, everything worked perfectly for me.
Nissan really, we've done a television piece on this. Nissan really come from mid-pack to starting to really nip at the leaders of the pack because they're doing so well.
And their 360 camera, I remember the first time I had it, I think was in the Quest. It gives you a full 360 view around you, and it's really beneficial.
Yeah, it's a good car. What have you been driving, Jenya?
I've been driving the Subaru BRZ. This is a sister car to the Scion FRS. Sean drove this, and one of the complaints he had was it had it didn't have enough power, and I agree with that too, that the 2-liter, 200 horsepower engine does need a turbocharger.
This is what makes us. We're all sitting here smiling in the studio because Zhenya's clearly talking about driving these cars in a video game.
Yeah, and forgets to tell that.
Because he's only 14 and he doesn't have a driver's license yet.
But the nice thing about the BRZ and the FRS is they're $25,000, but they're actually cars that actually make you that look more expensive than they are.
I do. One of the big things I don't like about the FRS and the BRZ is the power in the low gears is very slow. So your 0 to 60 times are just disabled by the amount of power that's converted onto the road.
Yeah, but I do think that the BRZ looks a little bit sharper than the FRS.
I do. I agree with you too, although there's hardly any changes, but I like the stereo system in the BRZ better than the FRS as well. All right, good. Oli, deal of the week?
I have you can choose from any of them. I have 4 2012 S60s right now, T5, 5-cylinder turbos. They range from 20 to 21, different options, different colors. You pick.
And to find these vehicles, we go to?
DLRnordic.com.
All right. Good deals of the week. Oli offering up some, the lowest prices?
I think the lowest price one was $19,800.
$19,800 for that car. A good deal. Of course, we wouldn't tell you about it otherwise. All right, coming up on Test Miles, we are going to talk BMWs. I was lucky enough to drive the F1 track in Austin. It's called Circuit of the Americas. We're going to be joined by Oleg, who is one of the BMW promotion staff team. He's also in charge of all their vehicles. Oleg's going to tell us all about the new X6M, which we drove at Circuit of the Americas this week. That's coming up on Test Miles. I'm Nick Miles.
Test Miles, like NASCAR, but with one right turn. TestMiles.com.
Welcome back to Test Miles and FM News 101 KXL, our automotive radio show live from our studios in downtown Portland for the latest automotive news. Follow us on Twitter at Test Miles.
Hey, Nick, here's a fun fact with which you can impress your friends. BMW first started in 1916 in Bavaria, Germany, as an aircraft engine producer. So in 1923, they started building motorcycles, and it wasn't until 1928 that BMW manufactured its first car, an Austin 7. BMW was formed out of 3 different companies with a history of making aircraft engines, and other industrial engines making cars was the logical step.
Excellent. All right. So I was lucky enough to join BMW in Austin, Texas this week to drive their new X6M. That was the F1 track in Austin, which is called Circuit of the Americas. And joining us on the phone is Oleg Satanovsky. Oleg is, amongst other things, the Fleet and Performance Center Specialist for BMW. Oleg, how would you best explain BMW M cars?
Good morning, Nick. Thank you so much for having me on. I would say the best way to sum up an M car is it's the ultimate driving machine version of the ultimate driving machine.
Perfect.
The M brand itself started back in 1972, so they're 43 years old, and the motorsport division started to really give BMW kind of a hands-on control over racing activities. So BMW wanted to work on their own touring cars at the time, and they hired their own drivers. And after a few years, customers started to look at the success that motorsport had in racing, and they said, well, we would like to purchase some of these cars ourselves. And back then, manufacturers actually had to produce a road version of race cars for homologation. So if you wanted to race a particular car, the different organizations required that you produce 500, 1,000, 3,000, whatever it may be, road versions to make sure that you were in fact racing a production car. So right around 1978, BMW M introduced their first car, which was the M1. And from there, over the years, they've always been producing kind of racing versions of street-going BMWs. Nowadays, it's really kind of a high-performance version of a BMW. It's not so much a version of the race cars anymore, but through technology, it's really evolved into so much more.
Now, let's talk about numbers of these cars. So versus a regular BMW, which isn't the M version, what's the sort of sales numbers that we're looking at? How do they compare on sales for the regular BMWs?
It's much more exclusive on the X6, which we're talking about, for example. Over 5 years, 2010 through 2014, the previous generation X6M sold about 5,400 units in the U.S., which is about one of every 12 X6s sold.
All right, so an exclusive car. Who's buying the M versions?
I think it's people who are looking for the exclusivity of a limited edition vehicle. They're looking for performance. Of course, not every M customer will take their car to the track, but they know that every M car that they buy is absolutely designed to be driven on the track. If they want to do track days, the car will basically provide anything that they need, from brakes, tires, right from the showroom for track use. But also, nowadays cars are equipped with more technology, more comfort features. So M cars have kind of become track-oriented, but at the same time more comfort-oriented. Before, 30 years ago, an M car would have been very finely focused on track use and may not have been the most comfortable car to drive on the street. Nowadays, the cars do both. So it's really people looking for a more exclusive, although also a faster BMW.
Let's talk about the differences between an X6 and an X6M. How is the M engine and the horsepower compared to the regular X6?
It's quite a bit more than the standard X6. Of the two versions of regular production X6s, we have an X6 35i, which is a twin turbocharged 6-cylinder engine that makes 300 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. The next step up is the X6 50i, which is a 4.4-liter V8 twin turbocharged as well. That's 400 horsepower and 450 pound-feet of torque. The X6M takes that to the next level. It's 567 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, which is 20 horsepower more than the previous X6M. It's also 553 pound-feet of torque, which is 53 more than previous generation. So it's quite a large increase in power. But the X6M, for example, it's not just power, it's also lighter weight material. So the X6M is actually lighter than the X6 50i, but it's faster. So for a 5,100-pound vehicle, the X6M runs from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat, which is truly sports car territory.
No, it's an unbelievable vehicle, and I will tell you, so when we were in Austin last week, and thank you BMW for inviting me, and thank you Oleg for that, but when I was in Austin last week, I drove this car around the track. I'm not a great track driver. I like to do it because it's an experience, but I get fairly scared. We didn't have helmets on, which was a nice part of it on the F1 track, so you didn't have the restrictions, but it was about 30, 32 degrees first thing in the morning. It warmed up to mid-30s in the middle morning. And when I got out of that car, soaking wet. I was just sweating down my back. I scared the living daylights out of me. Oleg, thank you so much for joining us this morning on TestMiles. You're a good friend, and you've always helped the show out. Thank you so much. When we come back, thanks, Oleg. When we come back, we'll talk about a website, which is Portland-based, and they specialize in the smallest, greenest, funnest parts of life. We'll tell you more about that as TestMiles returns. I'm Nick Miles.
Throw it in neutral and coast in with TestMiles.com.
Live from our studios in downtown Portland on a Sunday morning, this is America's Car Radio Show. If you'd like to follow us and be part of the Car Nation for more fun facts about what goes on with cars, go to our Facebook page. It's TestMiles, E-N-T, TestMiles Entertainment. We'd love to have an extra like from you.
Here's a fun fact you can impress your friends with. Honda was the first Japanese car manufacturer to launch a dedicated luxury brand in 1986. Its name was Acura.
Portland has its very own small car blog. It's called Subcompact Culture. If you head to Subcompact Culture, you can read all about capable small vehicles that are inexpensive to own and operate. The brains behind the website are a husband and wife team, Mercedes and Andy Lilienthal, and we've invited them into the KXL studios today to tell us more about what they do. So first question, team, what is a subcompact car?
Yeah, so a subcompact car, technically, it's actually defined by the EPA on interior volume, which actually is kind of strange considering it makes some cars that are much larger classified as a subcompact. But generally, I typically go by a wheelbase. So something with a wheelbase of around 100 inches, I typically consider a subcompact car. So obviously, it's something that's not too big. But, it doesn't have to be something as small as a smart car, too. So, the Nissan Versa, some of these other, cars out there that size are definitely a subcompact. But then you step up to things like compact cars that are things the size of, say, a Subaru Impreza or a Honda Civic, Ford Focus.
And they still fall in that category. The interesting thing is, so you're telling me that we're really using an antiquated government stat to show us what a subcompact car is. Really, it's what falls into a lifestyle size almost.
Yeah, exactly. If you go on the EPA's website with regards to car classification, you'll find out that, for instance, the Ford Mustang is technically a subcompact car, whereas a Nissan Versa is a midsize. So it makes no sense, but it's based on the interior size of the car.
So why did you guys start the website?
So we started the website because actually a friend of mine had said, hey, have you ever thought about, you're a car enthusiast, you ever thought about starting a car blog? And I thought, well, this was back in like 07, 08, and I thought, do people really read blogs? Of course, nowadays we think that's almost laughable. But so I just kind of started out and started writing about my passion, which is our passion, which is small cars. And there wasn't really anybody doing it. And it was just kind of a sort of an experiment to see if people would like it. There's small cars are one of these deals where a lot of times if people see that you are driving a small car, they think, well, they don't have any money, or they're poor. Well, there's actually lots of people that enjoy driving a smaller vehicle just because it's more maneuverable, it's less expensive to maintain, sometimes more fun to drive.
And it gets you the same place. Whether you're driving a Jaguar XJ or whether you're driving a Honda Fit, you still get from A to B, right? It's just
exactly
you can do it economically, and also I think parking is a big thing. Not so much in the Portland metropolitan area, but when you talk about big cities like New York, where they may not have defined parking spaces, or some of the garage parking is charged per square foot, then at that point you can actually get a car in there and get it cheaper, right?
Smaller is better.
Oh, that works out for me too, only being 5'4". So how popular is
my height?
how popular is subcompact culture?
It's pretty popular. We've been in the New York Times before. We have an international readership, large amount of readers in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, New Zealand, Australia, in addition, of course, to North America.
And especially the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, lots of, the Pacific Northwest is a bit of a microcosm, if you will. That's not a pun. Because people buy small cars in the Pacific Northwest. You see lots of smart cars. You see lots of Toyota Priuses, Toyota Prius C, Fiat 500s, much more than, say, like, we're from the Midwest originally. And you don't see nearly the volume of, say, like the Fiat 500 or Ford Fiesta.
I was interested to know the new survey that came out this week that showed what the #1 cars were in different states. So there's a map online at AOL Autos, and they have this map, and they show. And I wasn't floored about Seattle. Seattle is pretty obvious. The Subaru Outback was the #1 selling car, but Portland or the Oregon, it's the Ram 1500. It's the #1 selling vehicle in our state. I was kind of shocked by that because I always thought, we are the green guys, we are the small cars, we are the Subaru nation. But I guess not. Guess I was wrong.
We really like all cars. It's not like we have anything against big cars. There's some awesome big cars out there. It's just I prefer to drive a smaller car just because I'm more comfortable with it. We both started out with small cars,
and we've owned small cars all of our lives. Many of them.
I mean, your first car was what was it? Your 80s?
It was a 1987 Honda Civic CRX SI. So manual. It was wonderful. It was fantastic.
Boy, did Andy find his match, didn't he?
I know, right?
It's true. It's amazing. Yeah, we actually
married a wife named Mercedes.
That's true. We actually met on the way down to a car show in Chicago. So.
And wait a second, Mercedes do have a B class. So
this is true.
That's not all about big luxury cars too. What does subcompact culture do for the reader?
So we offer a host of things, news, reviews, culture, lifestyle. So you can find reviews of all the latest subcompact cars and compact cars. Every now and then something a bit bigger too. on the website. And so we have that. We keep track of sales too. Each month we do a sales report to see which small cars are selling the best. We have project cars. We have a Subaru WRX. We have our Toyota Yaris, and then our Suzuki Sidekick, our little off-road toy, and adventure mobile. It's a sort of unfortunate shade of green. We call it the Teal Terror. Affectionately, yeah. But we do off-road stuff with that. We travel with it. But we do all kinds of things. So trends, lifestyle.
Go on.
And we talk about all sorts of facets of it. So it's not necessarily just the fuel efficiency. It's the looks. It's, what we like about them, what we don't necessarily like about them. It's a very honest opinion in regards to all facets of all the cars, whether they're our own or the test review vehicles and so on and so forth.
Perfect. Now, tell me a little bit about, in your opinion, what are the best 5 subcompact cars in North America?
So, yeah, we have...
Are you looking at each other because you want to make sure you don't say something the other one doesn't want to say?
Yeah, that's we sometimes differ in opinion on this, but we talk about it quite a bit. I think from an entry level perspective, like somebody really just getting into a car, the Chevrolet Spark is an amazing little vehicle. I mean, it really shows that you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a really decent, really cool, modern small car. It's not a penalty box like they used to be back in the 80s and early 90s, where you would get a vehicle that was really inexpensive and really low on features. The Spark is great.
You can get them as low as around $12,000 right now for a brand new 2015 Spark LS.
Yeah. So that one... one of my personal favorites is the Fiat 5. Yeah, one of our personal favorites is the Fiat 500 Abarth. I mean, it is. If you drive that car and you don't have a smile on your face, then there's something wrong with you. It is just ridiculously fun.
However, I drove that car with our good friend Nick James, and it was the most entertaining thing is Nick's about 8 foot tall.
Yeah.
And the most entertaining thing about Nick was watching him with his knees up by his ears driving that vehicle.
Yeah, perhaps not the best for super tall people, but I'm under 6 foot, and so is Mercedes. But it sounds like a little Ferrari got stuck in a shrink ray.
I'm under 6 foot too. Well, I'm under 7 foot.
I'm barely under 6 foot too.
Yeah, I'm actually under 9 feet tall. So.
I like to say I'm both vertically and horizontally challenged, so I fit into a lot of different things.
So, what goes into testing a subcompact vehicle? How do you test it? How do you rate it? What do you do when you get one in the test fleet?
So, being small cars, we're always looking at the interior size, how easy it is to park, how they ride on the highway, how they perform in the city, and fuel economy are always important.
Interior cargo volume as well. How can you end up packing anything and everything into the back of a car? So for instance, the Honda Fit we really love because it has the magic seats. You can put a longboard in it. You can put a huge dresser in it. They fold up, they fold flat, they fold, down. It's things like that I think are really important from a perspective of a small car.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, you guys, it's really good to have you on. Will you be able to come back soon and then be on the show again?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it'd be our
we'd
pleasure.
love to be here.
All right, good. Well, we're listening to Test Miles here on FM News 101. We're out of time for this segment, but we'll be back with some more and our news quiz. You'll find out how much our team have been studying news in the last week or so because we're going to put their information to the test. This is Test Miles on FM News 101 KXL. I'm Nick Miles.
Favorite us, tweet us, friend us, love us, all at testmiles.com. It's Test Miles on FM News 101.
We'd like to keep you informed all week long. And to do that, just go to Twitter and follow us at TestMiles. That's our Twitter handle.
Hey, Nick, here's a fun fact that the Dodge Viper was almost called the Challenger. When Bob Lutz ran the company, he was going through some names like the Python, the Sidewinder, and almost came up with the Challenger before coming up with the nameplate Viper.
Thank goodness for that, because the whole snake thing would have fallen on its backside if you called it the Challenger with a snake emblem. just wouldn't have worked. Right, this is the part of the show when we like to see how much knowledge our in-studio team has of the week's car industry news, which means it's time to play the news quiz. So here is the first question. Who is recalling more than 170,000 vehicles to fix engine compartment seal problems that may spark a fire? Bradley.
Hey, I know this one, and shocking, it's Mercedes. We think of Mercedes as ultimate quality, but they've got a problem with predominantly the 2013 to 2015 E350s. It's a seal that is in the back of the engine compartment and can fall down into the engine and catch fire.
Don't like that at all. Doesn't work for me. Ford is teaming up with who to build a limited edition Mustang GT? Oli.
Ford is going to be teaming up with Petty's Garage, Richard Petty, and it's going to be based off. They got a lot of people interested. They have a Ford Mustang that they had down at SEMA that they built. It's a 627 horsepower Mustang. They're going to be offering a stage 1 with about a number of 100 and a stage 2, which has some other upgrades, special paint. And they're going to offer 43, but one of them's already spoken for with Brian Johnson from AC/DC. Already has dibs on one of those.
Excellent. All right, next question. Who is going to change the name of their electric car? Sean.
That's going to be Chevrolet with the Chevy Bolt. They're going to rename it the Electra.
I actually thought the Bolt was good, although I got confused with the Volt and the Bolt all the time. But the Electra, I don't know, it sounds like a 1980s singing star to me.
It actually sounds like a stripper's name, sorry.
It sounds like a bombed movie with Jennifer Gardner in it.
All right, next question. Which automotive company announced they will build a new $500,000 car? Genia.
Mercedes-Benz.
And?
They have decided to take the Mercedes S-Class Maybach and put a Pullman badge on it and stretch it. They stretched the whole thing. It's got 4 seats in the back instead of 2, like the normal Maybach, and it's going to cost $500,000, and that is just higher than a Rolls-Royce money.
No. Depends how much you get your Rolls-Royce.
I'm kind of thinking we need one of those at Lucky Limousine.
Oh, do you?
How great would that be?
I wonder if you get a long-term test drive out of one.
Oh, perfect.
That way you could just use it.
So
and
when we
make
have
money out of
Jay-Z
it.
coming into town, we can just order that one up.
All right, electric car charging companies are competing with who for more electric charging market placement? Bradley.
As the resident electric guy, I guess, here, I will do this one. It's the public utilities, which some companies like, all the charging stations that are out there are saying, should we be using public money and competing with the utilities to compete against us, which is ironic since public money is going in to fund the sale of electric cars. So PGE and some people like that are getting into owning the charging stations.
See, I think it's probably a good idea to keep them going, but here's what happens. So electricity is not being used as much. We're all going to electric saving
And solar power
appliances
and all that.
people going to solar power and trying to save money. So what happens is they're trying to up the amount of revenue that they make, so they're muscling in on somebody else's territory. But ultimately, don't they make money if we recharge on electric anyway because they sell them the electric money?
But they're going to get it on both ends now.
Yeah.
So they'll own that.
I'm not sure I like that. I like the idea that they promote these things, but I don't like the idea of them saying, I want a bigger percentage of the pie. All right, which NASCAR driver broke his leg in an accident is now out of the Daytona 500? Oli, I think that is.
That is Oli, and or me, I should say. We shouldn't use third person, I don't think.
No, it's
for the
very
show.
confusing for the audience.
Kyle Busch, he broke his leg yesterday in a race, and it stirred up a lot of commotion mostly between NASCAR drivers because he hit a wall that didn't have a safer barrier, where most of the track does. They think the whole track should have the safer barrier at this point. Coincidentally, his brother's out of the race, so they can watch it together.
The accident looked like he was far more seriously hurt than he actually was. And of course, you sometimes get, disorientated by the fact that when these cars hit the wall, the idea is that they break into a million pieces. So the energy goes in the direction everywhere but the driver and saves the driver. But I thought that was going to be a lot worse than it actually
Yeah,
ended up
I think this time next year, the entire track will have the safer barrier. And, with the kind of money that's going around and protecting drivers from injury, I think every track should be.
Absolutely. All right, final question in this morning's news quiz. According to the USA Today, what states have the worst drivers? Sean.
That would be a tie, actually, for Montana and South Carolina. They just have the worst drivers. But if fatality rate goes to South Carolina, failure to obey traffic laws is Oklahoma, number 1 speeding tickets is Hawaii, and careless driving is Delaware.
Oh, good. So Oregon didn't make any of the top ones. I kind of like that. I do know that the worst driving countries, or the worst country for driving is Russia. So
That's why they all have the dash cams, but that makes for some entertaining.
They just
YouTube
park on the
videos.
sidewalks. Eve was there, and they just park on the sidewalks anywhere they want to. But you're not going to tell the guy with the Maybach
to do
where
that.
he could
They've
park.
got tanks that pull semi-trucks if they're broken down.
Yeah, it's a strange country. All right, TestMiles, you can check us out on all social media, testmiles.com, also Facebook and the Twitters. Thanks to the guys from Subcompact Culture. Thanks to BMW. We'll talk to you soon. We'll be back next week. I'm Nick Miles.